Hello everyone. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I hope everyone had a very refreshing break, even though it was for 5 minutes. Um, okay, so we will continue the seminar, the youth research seminar today, with the presentation by Sister Nick Naili binti Nick Nubli. Her work is titled East versus West, a post-colonial analysis of the Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini. Sister Nelly, you may start presenting now.
Assalamualaikum. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Um, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. I hope everyone is having a great day. My name is Nick Neely, and today I will present on my research entitled East versus West, a post-colonial analysis of the Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini. So moving right into the presentation, the reason I undertake this study is because I identified certain issues or problems related to the author of the novel, author of the novel himself. So, the author, Khalid Hosseini, has lived in the United States since 1980, which, if we do a little bit of math, is like 23 years before the publication of his first novel, The Kite Runner, in 2003. So I believe or argue that due to having lived 2 decades in the United States, he may or may have not internalized a Western perception or view of the East, especially in this modern world through media and etc. So next, okay, so in this presentation, I will mainly focus on discussing Khalid Hosseini's novel, The Kite Runner, using a post-colonial criticism with special emphasis on average side concept of Orientalism. So instead of discussing on the characterization or certain themes, I will discuss on the journey of the narrative, Amir, from the east to the west, from the east to the west. Okay, so in order to have a further understanding of this study, it is important for us to know a little information about Afghanistan itself. So Afghanistan is, in contrast to popular beliefs or misinformations from the internet, Afghanistan is not part of the Middle East, but it is a country located in South Asia. So the country is consists of a multi-ethnic and also a tribal society, in which there are 14 different ethnic groups. But for the purpose of this study, I will focus on only two different ethnic groups, which is the Pashtun and also the Hazara. So, firstly, the Pashtun, according to research, Pashtun is the dominant ethnic group, and they also hold most of the influential and political power in the country. The Pashtun are also Sunni Muslims, which in contrast to the Hazara are Shia Muslims. So the Hazara are the minority ethnic group, and they are considered as the underclass of the Afghan society. The Hazara have faced several forms of discrimination and violence since the 19th century, such as slavery, ethnic cleansing, and land confiscation. Next, moving on to the historical period of Afghanistan. So the country have faced several foreign interventions and also insurgencies over the years. And this historical period is also briefly mentioned in the novel, except for the 9/11 attack in the United States. So first, although the country was quite stable under the rule of King Zahir Shah, the monarchy was overthrown in 1973 and followed by the Soviet invasion in 1979. As reflected in the novel, there are millions of Afghans that fled and seek refuge in Pakistan and also Iran. Next, after the Soviet withdrew, there are civil wars between Afghan Mujahideen and also other rebel groups, and this led to the rise of the Islamic extremists, the Taliban. And lastly, we have lastly in 2001, the United States announced the global war on terror after the 9/11 attack in Afghanistan. Okay, moving on. This study holds three main objectives, which is first to analyze the journey of the narrator Amir from the east to the west, which may reinforce the Orientalist perception of the East, specifically Afghanistan. Next is to examine the narrative strategies used by the author and that illustrates Western superiority over the East. And lastly, is to identify the narrator's conception, view, and experiences in the Orient in comparison to the Occident. Okay, so by conducting this study, it is hoped that it will be a beneficial addition to research of post-colonial studies, specifically Everett's concept of Orientalism in literature. And besides that, the novel also holds a significant reputation in literature today, mainly because of its depiction of the Afghan culture and also the Taliban, which may attract readers, especially Western readers, after the 9/11 in this post September 11 period. So it is hoped that this study could help point out certain inaccurate representations of the East, specifically Afghanistan, and also the religion Islam. Okay, in order to conduct this study, I have utilized a textual and contextual analysis of the novel by focusing on the narrator's journey. This study also utilized the concept of post-colonialism and Edward Said concept of Orientalism. Since there are many concepts in the post-colonial theory, the theory that I find related to this study is mimicry, subaltern, othering, and unhomeliness. Okay, moving on to the most interesting part of this presentation is the findings. So, but before I discuss further about my findings, I would like to give a trigger warning to fellow audiences, as there are mentions of sexual violence and also, in other words, rape. So I apologize if any of you feel uncomfortable. Okay. Sorry. First, through the narrator's journey, Amir, in the East, it is found that the act of violence becomes a main and also a repetitive occurrence throughout his life in Afghanistan. So, Amir holds a pessimistic view of the country, mainly because of the widespread violence that is derived from the ethnic conflicts between the Pashtun and Hazara, as I mentioned in the background earlier. So, according to the concept of post-colonialism and Orientalism, the construction of a violent Orient is embedded in the Anglo-American political thought, where it is perceived that being violent is the nature for Eastern and specifically Afghan people. So, this act of violence can be seen through a male rape incident between a character named Asif and Hassan, where the narrator witnessed and in a way allows to occur. So this rape incident, serves to illustrate an act of domination and also an illustration of power, and it is not out of love or lust. So the character Asif is a Pashtun, and even though he is a young boy at this time, he holds a strong political belief that Afghanistan only belongs to the Pashtun and not the Hazara. He perceives that the Hazara only pollute their homeland, and as a result of the raid, he also takes sadistic pleasure in tormenting Hassan, who is Hazara, because he is able to show his dominant status as a Pashtun. Next, on the other hand, we have the narrator Amin, who in a way allows for the assault to occur because he chooses to run away from the incident instead of helping his friend Hassan, who is a Hazara. So in a way, Amir does not help his friend because he has internalized this Pashtun and Hazara power dynamic, which largely contribute to the ambivalent nature of his relationship with Hassan. So their relationship is restricted by a form of unbalanced power status between the Pashtun and Hazara. So while Amir accepts his privileged status as a Pashtun, he struggles with his personal relationship with Hassan, which largely contributes to his decision to not save Hassan and run away from the incident. So by running away, this contributes largely to the feeling of guilt throughout the novel. And then we have Hassan. So it cannot be denied that this incident gives um, gives a traumatic impact on Hassan, but he chooses to stay silent about this assault because first he feels his sense of identity is being violated, and he also feels a sense of unhomeliness, especially in this Afghanistan Pashtun-centered society. So he does not feel belong, and it is better for him to keep silent about the assault. Next, in the second part of the journey, which is Amir's return to Afghanistan as an adult, this part of his journey is important in terms of its portrayal of violence and religion, particularly Islam. So, as Islam is the predominant religion in Afghanistan and the population are mostly Muslims, like 99% of the population are Muslims, it is easy for the author, through his narrator Amir, to assume that Islam largely condones violence in the country. So, from the perspective of Edward Said, through a Western lens, it is common for Islam to be treated with hostility and fear because it belongs to the Orient. As a result, and can be seen in novel, Islam and Muslims are seen as lacking of humanity, are not democratic, and also not rational. This portrayal of Islam fits exactly into the Western media representation of Islam and Muslims. Okay. The issue where Islam condones violence in the Orient can be seen through two events. First one is the public execution event conducted by the Taliban. So to cut short, in this event, the Taliban use religious articulation where they deem that such violent acts are deemed acceptable as it is coming from the word of God, and it is also necessary to carry out the Sharia. This violent act actually leads to a murder, but it is seen as acceptable by using religious articulation of Islam. So this thing is problematic in a way that there is no clear distinction made between those who adhere to Islamic practices, values, and beliefs in comparison to those who conduct extremism, especially to readers who are not familiar with the religion Islam, like Western readers in America. Next, the event is through Amir's interaction with his father, Baba. So, Baba holds a negative view of Islam, where in this line, he clearly mocks the religion Islam. Baba's attitude towards the religion frames Muslim and those who adhere to Islamic practices and beliefs to be a primitive and backwards community, as they see that Islam is unfit and as unfit in the modern world, and especially for the Western modern practices. Okay, moving on. In the later part of Amir's journey takes place largely in America. So his experience in America is very different in comparison to his experience in Afghanistan. So as I mentioned earlier, Amir witnessed this rape incident of his friend Hassan, and this contributes largely to his feeling of guilt. So, in order to escape from this feeling of guilt, he finds salvation in America. So, in America, he is also able to achieve his dreams and goals. In America, Amir also embraces the Western dominant culture. One may argue that this is the reason why people migrate to America, where it cannot be denied that people migrate to other countries to find a better life. But in the novel, Amir mentions that long before any sorts of political invasion, he already views Afghanistan as a city of ghosts, where the country is not does not give any benefit to him. And it is also important to note that in the novel, Amir comes from a rich family in Afghanistan. So, on the other hand, while Amir gets his education, was able to marry, in Amir, in a way, he gets all the American dream. His friend Hassan in Afghanistan suffers from poverty and brutality by the Taliban, and he eventually got murdered. So, this contrasting portrayal of Amir in America and Hassan in Afghanistan suggests that those who seeks for modernity and advancement is only exclusive to those belonging in the West, and in the East, they suffer from deprivation and impoverishment that cannot be improved in the East. Next is this is the final part of Amir's journey, where he is given the task to save Sohrab, which is Hassan's son in Afghanistan. This is to save him from the evilness of the Eastern man. So Amir took this responsibility because of his guilt from the past of not saving Hassan. Amir has to save Sohrab from this evil Eastern man, which turns out to be Asif, and his complicated relationship with Asif is in a way reduced to a us versus them scenario. So this is because Asif, the Eastern man, is a pedophile who treats children as sex slaves, and his association with Hitler serves largely to demonize his Eastern identity, his evil Eastern identity. So Asif's identity serves as an antithesis to Amir's Western values and identity, as he already lived in the United States and integrate into the Western culture and society. And then, um, in a way, Amir's heroic rescue of Hassan's son Sohrab is similar to the white savior or the popular white man's narrative. This is because by simply putting Amir as the only hope to save Sohrab in Afghanistan, and also making Amir as the Western embodiment over the Eastern man, Asif, it suggests that the Orient, the East, is incapable of saving themselves from the dangers and the violent acts they perpetuated in their own land. And the Orient, Afghanistan, they largely depend on Western powers in order to civilize and bring them out of the darkness. In a way, it's like that. So um, this um, this event of Amir's rescue of Sohrab in Afghanistan brings a positive view of American expedition in Afghanistan. So, in conclusion, um, Khalid Hossain's in his novel *The Kite Runner* is an example of a 21st century work that participates in orientalizing itself. This is because it fits into the Western expectation of the East, and the novel purposely orientalizes itself in order to gain recognition and popularity, especially in the United States. This is evident when the novel and also the author himself has gained worldwide recognition, especially by the Bush family, who who ironically announced the global war on terror in Afghanistan. And the contrasting portrayal of the East in comparison to the West suggests, as analyzed in this study, suggests that this novel is written by a pro-Western author who upholds Western values and, in a way, legitimizes the Western intervention in Afghanistan. And this work can also be seen as a continuation of Western literary tradition of writing the East. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Nelly, for your presentation. And now I open the floor for the audience to ask questions to Sister Nelly.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I have one question for Naili, which is why did you choose to analyze this novel?
Thank you, Sister Dia, for your question. Well, I chose to analyze this novel is because first, during the pandemic, I've read this. I am very familiar with this novel, The Cat Runner, and I read it 2 times because it's very sad. And I cannot deny that this novel successfully gives us the feeling that the struggles of people living in Afghanistan. But as I read book reviews, there are people who saying that the novel there are aspects of Orientalism in the novel, and when I um, discussed it with Dr. Homa, my supervisor, he also mentioned about author who lives in the United States for decades and decided to write about their country. So that's the reason why I choose this.
Thank you.
I
Thank
think
you.
there's one question by
Yes, sure. You may answer it straight away.
um, so Ms. Fatiha asks, what do you think of Amir's failure to redeem himself even after he has flourished in America? That he still has to go back to Afghanistan to redeem, forgive, heal himself. Um, oh, okay, I see. Um, so this is the issue where Amir feels the need to return to Afghanistan in order to redeem himself. So this is the reason why I um, argue of the Orientalist um, perception of the Orientalist aspect of the novel, where the this Western individual and embodiment have to return to Afghanistan in order to like civilize those living in the East. And so through this, by saving those in the East, Amir feels like he is like better than he is when he is in Afghanistan. I hope that answers your question. Um, in my analysis, I argue that yes, he did it for himself, and because of his guilt, um, because of his guilt towards Hassan, that is why he like okay, I have to save Sohrab, but mainly it is to redeem himself, then like to save Sohrab, because initially in the novel he is very reluctant to go back to Afghanistan just to save a child that he doesn't. Okay, thank you so much for the question.
Thank you for the question, uh, Ms. Patel. And any other questions from the audience? There you go, Nelly.
Okay, so another question Dr. Humam asked, does having a first person narrator in the novel affect the Orientalist theme or message? Like, is it a story from a million? Yes. Using a first person narrator instead of a third person narrator largely contributes to the Orientalist message in the novel because the experience of Amir, of the narrator Amir in Afghanistan and also in America, the readers are largely attached to Amir's experience only, where we only know the negative side of Afghanistan because Amir's experience is in Afghanistan is predominantly negative because of the rape and violence that he witnessed. So yes, maybe if the novel uses a third person narrator, the the narration or the novel will not be not be as subjective. I hope that answers your question, Doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Hama, for the question. And thank you, Sister Nelly, for answering the questions and presenting about your topics to us. So next up, I would like to invite Sister Nur Ainun Baria binti Zahari to present her work, Heroes on a Quest, Moral Dimensions in Hansel and Gretel. The floor is yours, Sister Baria. You may start presenting now.
All right, thank you. Assalamualaikum, everyone. Thank you, Nurin Zahira, for presenting on my behalf. So my name is Nur Ainun Bara binti Zahari from English Language and Literature Department. So for today conference seminar, I will be presenting on the Heroes on a Quest, Moral Dimensions in Hansel and Gretel. So moving on to the next slide, for the introduction, I would like the audience to know that Hansel and Gretel is one of the most famous tale in the collection of Grimm's fairy tale. So Grimm fairy tale is actually a German, the collection of German folk tales. So basically, the Grimm brothers, the author of the Grimm's fairy tale book, the collection, they collect the tales from uh, from the from the German people, so and put it in a book to be for it to be like to be passed down to the next generation, for it to not just vanish just like that. So out of all fairy tales in the world, Grimm's fairy tales are one of the most very famous one. Like it's many of fairy tales in Grimm's are adapted to motion pictures such as Cinderella, Snow White, and you see many more. And Hansel and Gretel is one of the tale that is very famous and was given a new alternate ending, something like that. And for this study, I used the final version of Hansel and Gretel from Grimm's fairy tale. And Hansel and Gretel is actually the story of two children that was abandoned in the forest by the stepmother. And they met a witch in the forest in the gingerbread house. A bit disclaimer, I am not actually in a good health condition, so please bear with me. So moving on to the next slide. So the scope for this presentation, we are be looking on the background of the study, methodology, and the analysis, and also the conclusion. Then for the significance of this study, Grimm's fairy tale are the most prominent collection of fairy tales, and the books have been sold millions and translated to various languages. The original language is in German, German language, and the one that I'm using is in English translation. So with this, Wilhelm and Jacob Grimm has become the leading figure in children literature. And to fully appreciate this collection, the examination of archetypal element that embedded within the fairy tale, and in this like Hansel and Gretel, it is a very worthy effort to examine it. And to examine this study, I use the archetypal dimension, the archetypal analysis criticism. So these archetypes that appears in the story has given them the universality, the archetypal. Okay, it is that the archetypal dimension of the tales that grant them the universality and success across the numerous culture. And the study of the key archetype of hero's journey explore the common themes that imbue the tale with their moral component. So moving on to the thesis statement. The study employs an analytical approach to explore the various archetypal aspects that encompasses a selected story from the Grimm fairy tale, particularly Hansel and Gretel. So in this study, I will be using archetypal criticism as the foundation framework to the analysis by examining the key archetypes based on the hero journey model by Joseph Campbell. And moving on to the next slide, the objective. The objective of this study, I put 3 objectives. The first one is to analyze the thematic and narrative significance of archetypes in Hansel and Gretel. Second one is to examine the moral message delivered through the use of archetypes in Hansel and Gretel. And the third one is to give me a moment, please. Thank you.
On behalf of Sister Baria, I'm very sorry for the inconvenience. She's having a what do you call it? So she has health issues. So I hope you all can bear with us for a while. Baria, are you okay?
I'm okay. Thank you
Okay.
for the clarification, Mr. Moderator. So, and the second, okay, let's go back to the objective. The second objective is to examine the moral message delivered through the use of archetype in Hansel and Gretel. And the last one is to study the significance of heroic quest as the major archetype in Hansel and Gretel. So, moving on to the methodology. So, in methodology, as I mentioned, I will be using the hero's journey model by Campbell, similar to the one presented by previous presenter Nadia. And Campbell used the term monomyth to describe the recurring pattern in the myth and folk tales. So basically, the pattern keep on appearing in different myths and stories. So, and this pattern, Campbell's categorized it into 3 major stages, which are departure stage, initiation, and return stage. And within these 3 stages, there are 17 phases. Let's move on to the next slide. So there's a picture, so you can see it better. So this is the diagram of the 7 phases in the 3 stages that Campbell had simplified lah, something like that. So in the first stage, the departure stage, it is where the hero leave the known world and enter the unknown world to begin their journey. Okay, and when in the unknown world, this is where the second stage takes place, which is the initiation stage, where the challenges are faced and overcoming various death-threatening, something like that, life-threatening environment and challenges. And the last one is after overcoming the challenges, the hero will return to the known world and share their boons that he gained through the journey. So moving on, before Campbell, Fry actually has already list out, like categorized, has categorized the archetypal journey into 3 stages, similar to Campbell. The first one is agon, the second one is pathos, and the third one is anagnorisis. This is stated in the book of Anatomy of Criticism. Okay, so now let's move on to the stages. Okay, stage number 1. So the stage number 1 is the departure, where the departure is where the hero begin the when the hero receives the call to the adventure, and it begins often in the place of comfort of the protagonist, usually home, or if the protagonist is the royalty, then it will start in a palace. So this is where the stage the heroes enter the unknown world, and it consists of 5 phases. The first one is the call to adventure, refusal to the call, and followed by supernatural aid, the crossing of the first threshold, and the belly of the whale. So moving on. So in this first stage, there are several I would say stages, phases. Okay, I name it in my FYP. I name it as phases to distinguish between the three major stages and the small phases. So in Hansel and Gretel, the first thing that happened is the order versus chaos, where Hansel and Gretel who was initially living with the father, and then the father marries another, which is and came the stepmother, and this stepmother is seen as an alien intruder that disrupt the harmony of the family. So and this stepmother is the one who initiated the abandonment of the children into the forest. But this happened not only once, but twice actually. So in the first attempt of abandoning the children into the forest, the children were able to return to their home, and this actually a symbolism of inability for the children to take on the call, to take on the adventure, the journey. So it also represent the inability for the children to progress forward. So this Battle Hymn named this stage as a regression. So to force the children to take on the journey, on the second attempt of the abandonment, sorry, the birds, the white birds, is known as the supernatural aid, is which is also an agent of God, the help from God, are the one that force the children to take on the journey when the children were not able to retrace the mark that they have left throughout their way from home to the forest. So with that, the children are left in the forest, and they have to spend 3 nights in the forest, and which I see it as the symbolism of faith of Christianity, which is one of their faith, which is the Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And the appearance of the bird that led to the children to the gingerbread house is actually the messenger of God, or maybe the representation of God himself in the Holy Spirit, because in one of the book, it mentioned that the bird, white bird or dove, is actually the representation of Holy Spirit. So it's the representation of God in himself. So moving on to the next slide. Okay. So the second stage, stage 2, is the initiation, where it took place when the heroes has already entered the. Thank you, thank you. Okay, give me a break. All right. Thank you, everyone. Okay, in stage 2, this is where the heroes has already entered the unknown world, and they happen to face the dangerous and life-threatening challenges. And this is where the transformation of the heroes take place. So in this stage, they consist of 6 phases: the road of trial, trials, meeting with the goddess, women as temperance, atonement with the god, the father, apotheosis, and the ultimate boon. However, Hansel and Gretel only 3 out of 6 phases in this stage, which are the road of trials, women as the temptress, and the ultimate boon. Moving on to the next slide. Okay, so for the first point is the snare gingerbread house as women. Why I say women? It's not that women. This is not literal women, yeah. So women here it's actually represent the seduction. So women as temptress is actually any seduction that might lead the heroes away from their actual purposes of the quest. So instead of able to take on the journey, defeat the dragon or something like that. So the women, the temptation might lead the heroes away. So in this in Hansel and Gretel, I put the gingerbread house as women because in the story, Hansel and Gretel eaten up the house and in excessive way, and that has lead to inability or failing to resist the temptation. So this has I define this as gluttony, the act of gluttony, selfishness, and lack of maturity. So, and the next one is the root of trial, the witch. The witch, in many tales, the witch is known as the ultimate evil and the arch enemy. Okay, I hope I pronounced that correctly. So after defeating the witch, the children basically trick the trickster. Why I say a trickster is because the witch actually used the house to trick the children to stay with her. You get what I mean, right? So when the children are able to trick the witch by saying that when Gretel said that I don't know how to get into the oven, and the witch entered the oven, then Gretel pushed her away, pushed her inside, and locked the oven, and he burned to death. So that is where the tricks happen. So the children started to learn to defeat evil with evil, something like that. So at this stage also, the children, Hansel and Gretel, started to show compassion and care, unselfishness between each other. There is one part of the story where Hansel was locked in the cage, but Gretel was allowed to walk around the house and do things and go out from the house. But due to care to her brother, Gretel did not run away alone. Instead, she waited for Hansel, killed the witch, and ran away together. And before they run away from the house, Hansel and Gretel actually took the treasure of the witch, the pearls, and also several precious stones. And the pearl is a symbolism of wisdom. Why I say the pearl is the symbolism of wisdom? It is because that the children was not blinded by the treasure of the witch. I mean, who wouldn't be like, oh, treasure, I would take all of them. But no, they didn't do that. They didn't take all the treasure. Instead, they only take what they need and just run away. Okay, moving on. Okay, moving on to the final stage, the return. So here, the heroes still undergo a series of challenges that take place in both familiar and unfamiliar world, or at the periphery of the unfamiliar world, which I call it the bridge of the both unknown and known world. So at this stage, it actually marks the successful growth of the hero. And at this stage also, the heroes share the treasure that they got from the unfamiliar world with their families or people. Another example is the Jack and the Beanstalk. If you know that story, when Jack he goes go up to the sky to what golden egg, golden harp, and he come down and share it with the people. So in this stage, it comprise of 6 phases. The refusal of return, the flight, the magic flight, rescue from without, crossing of the return threshold, master of the tool, and freedom to live. And however, in Hansel and Gretel, there are only 3 phases in this stage: rescue from without, crossing of the return threshold, and also freedom to live. Moving on, okay. So in so the lake. So the lake is the final challenge in the journey of Hansel and Gretel. If you notice, earlier, when Hansel and Gretel enter the forest, there's no such thing as lake, but suddenly the lake is there. So this is actually the final stage, final challenge that represent the need of divine grace in order for one person to be able to success. So it is also a reflection of Christian belief, and in many religion, water is also a symbol of purification. So it's also a symbol of rebirth and baptism as heroes. Why I use specifically baptism? It is to reflect the Christianity teaching that is embedded in the tale. It also reflects the religion of the Grimm's brother as well. So like other, for example, other religion that use water is Islam to purify, to take wudu, something like that, and the Hindu, they go to Ganges River, something like that. Also Judaism, the Jewish people, they have bathing, something. So, and to cross the lake, Hansel and Gretel actually take a ride on a white duck. So to take to cross the lake, they do not ride the duck together, but they ride the duck individually. So this particular attitude to the duck is actually showing the compassion of the children towards other creature. It's also sign of maturity as an individual. Like they know that they could not stay together forever, so they have to actually be on their own as well. So and also when they have crossed the lake and returned to the arm of the father, the stepmother is no longer there. It suddenly disappeared. So actually the disappearance of the stepmother shows the freedom to live for Hansel and Gretel, as well as to show that the evil has been defeated, because the witch before has been defeated, so the small evil is also gone. So now let's move on to conclusion. So there are many conclusions that I can get while writing Hansel and Gretel, but in this presentation I just put 2. So using archetypes in Hansel and Gretel can explore many moral messages which not only to be conveyed to adult readers but also children, and uh, using using archetypes we might not only we might not realize it on the first glance, but after reading using archetypes to think critically and deeper about it, is actually these archetypes that play a role to deliver subtle moral messages, especially to children, And the second conclusion is the use of children as heroes in the tale. Uh, Moving on to the next slide. Okay, the use of children as heroes in the tale. Um, Actually, using children in the tales is makes it easier for children to follow and understand the moral lesson, because children follow other children in most occasion. So when these children is used, Hansel and Gretel is used. So um, so when when Hansel and Gretel is used, the children feels like it's themselves. And also, some of the characters in the story remain nameless due to their universal nature. And it's also to deliver universal message about self-transformation and growth through universal archetype and characters. Okay, I see there's a lot of comments. Thank you for all um, corrections from everyone.
Okay. Thank you, Sister Naraina Baria, for her analysis on Hansel and Gretel and on Hansel and Gretel. But I'm really sorry for we're running short on time, so I'm gonna have to and Sister Baria also is not in a very healthy condition, so I think we'll skip her Q&A. And I think any questions that you want to ask to Sister Baria, you may ask in the WhatsApp group, or you can just type in the chat, and probably Sister Baria will take into and answer later.
Sorry, can I just ask one question? Because I missed that part. I think maybe because as you know, I'm having problems with my. I'm not sure if it's my laptop or my internet. You mentioned that you used the second version of the story. Do you have the reference for that? Because I'm very interesting to clarify.
Oh, not second version. Actually, it's the final version of the Grimm's fairy tales, because Grimm fairy tales undergo quite a lot of modification. So I used the final one.
Do you have the reference for this? Because the reason why I'm asking is that, as you know, the story when it is translated, sometimes there's some changes that to be made, and of course, Hansel and Gretel is arguably one of the most famous fairy tales, even in Germany. I think most German children, if not all, are familiar with the story. And the version that German children are told from a very young age is significantly different from the version that you would probably come across in English books. And this is why I'm interested in the version. Because just to let you know, in the German sources, actually it's quite clear what happens to the stepmother in the end, because at the beginning of the story, we are told that there is starvation. Yeah, the family is actually suffering from starvation. And it is actually the stepmother who, tells the father, you need to abandon your children in the forest because we can't feed them. There's not enough food for everyone. So just, leave the children in the forest, they can fend for themselves. And then at the end of the story, it is the stepmother, ironically, who dies in the meantime from starvation. So this is, of course, the structure of fairy tales, or Märchen especially, where evil has to meet with the just desserts. The evil person gets the punishment. So she dies from starvation. That is the point, actually. And so that's why I want to know, because maybe in the English version that has been cut out somehow, because you're mentioning she just disappears at the end. She doesn't actually just disappear. There is a closure there. And also in the German story, what's highlighted is also the father's, after having abandoned them, the father actually at the end admits that he could not come to terms with having abandoned his children in the forest. So there's that, that again, that feeling that because these are his biological children, that he has this guilt about it. Yeah, that's basically it.
All right, doctor. If you need the book, I actually have the book. So if you need it, I can
Sure.
borrow it to you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sister Maria, for the answers, and thank you, Dr. Tanya, Dr. Maria, and Miss Fatia in the chat for clarifying what Maria has missed, or apa, an inaccurate description or anything. Thank you for that. So I think we'll move on to the next presenter. We call upon Brother Muhammad Aminul Razin bin Abdul Majid to present his paper, The Influence of Patriarchy in Lauren Weisberger's The Devil Wears Prada. Brother Aminul, you may present your work.
Hello, Assalamualaikum. I hope you can see my slides and can hear my voice.
Yes, we can.
Right. My name is Muhammad. Oh, sorry. I have to present first. Okay, my name is Muhammad Amin Razin bin Abdul Majid. My thesis is entitled The Influence of Patriarchy in Laura Weisberger's The Devil Wears Prada. So, to start, many women venture into public spheres and join various professions. So, especially in America, this is a common situation for women to actually be directly involved at work, either as the employee or as the employer. So, however, despite the modernization era, there still exists some influences of the traditional male dominated system, the patriarchy in society. So, this traditional belief affects women, especially in the workplace, as it prevents women from progressing in their career. So thus, this present study aims to explore the influences of the patriarchal system on the workplace struggle of the female characters in The Devil Wears Prada by Lauren Weisberger. So here is the flow of my presentation. First, I will go to the background, followed by objectives, significance, methodology, findings, and lastly, I go to the conclusion. So a little bit of background of the study. So The Devil Wears Prada is written by Lauren Weisberger and published in 2003. It was set in New York, and the fiction is about the struggle of new grad named Andrea Sachs to become the personal assistant to the director in chief of the Runway magazine, Miranda Priestley. So some articles stated that this story is written based on real life experience of the author working in the fashion industry in early 2000. So ever since the publication, many researchers have discussed issues depicted in the novel. Like when the book was adapted into film back in 2006, directed by David Frankel, it even gained more attention. I believe some of us have watched the movie. So this work becomes a reference for modern feminist literature to study women's empowerment messages. So most of this research cover the personality and role demonstrated by the female characters, especially on the effective leadership role portrayed by Miranda Priestley. So they focus on the character of Miranda from her contributions, from her accomplishment in society, and more to how the portrayal of female characters in the novel different from the traditional image of women. So this current study focus on the novel and it looks at the life of the female characters in both personal and professional spheres. And then I explore the challenges faced by the female characters, particularly the worker. And then the study finds the connection with patriarchal culture and to explore the effects, the negative effects on the female characters. So here are the objectives of the study. First is to explore women's struggle in the workplace portrayed in the Devil Wears Prada. And the second is to analyze the effects of the workplace struggle on the female character in the Devil Wears Prada. Third is to analyze the influence of patriarchal culture on the working woman's struggle in Devil Wears Prada from feminist perspective. Moving on, the significance of the study. So the Devil Wears Prada is a reflection of modern society. Hence, exploring the challenges of the female characters in this novel would give a deeper understanding of the hardship of the female sex to cope, to fit in the modern world. So the social issue influenced by patriarchy may increase the risk of harmful practices towards women in the workplace. So as a result, women may find themselves incompatible, does not belong to the working environment. Hence, this paper proof that despite the world having progressed, despite that we have undergone modernization, urbanization, the patriarchal culture still exists in society. And the society contributes to the available literary studies and discussions on the novel The Devil's Prada, especially from the feminist perspective of, especially on feminist perspective of career women. So here's the methodology that I use. So to direct the research from feminist point of view, this paper uses Tyson's 2011 concept of patriarchy to analyze the struggle of the female characters. So three concepts are brought forward. The first one is the female inferiority. The second is the prescribed gender roles. And the third one is the true womanhood or femininity. So here are my findings. I found that the Devil's Prada by Lauren Weisberger portrays three workplace struggle in the novel. So the first one is the exploitation of women, the work-life imbalance, and the unrealistic beauty standards. So for the first one, the exploitation of women, it is mainly influenced by the concept of inferiority of women, so as promoted by patriarchy. Because according to patriarchal belief, female inferiority justifies the oppression of women, the oppression towards women. So it gives men a free pass to govern, to have control and dominance over the female sex, not only limited to home context, but also to in social, political, and economics. However, ironically, in this novel, the employer who caused all the distress, all the chaos and ill treatment of these female characters is actually a woman. She applies masculinity in her attitude to adhere to apply the masculinity to adhere to the patriarchal style in her leadership role. So the female boss dominates the work setting and exerts control over her fellow workers. It is evident in the novel when the female characters were given excessive workload by the employer. Like Andrea needs to fulfill all her boss's demands, which include handling her schedule, handling her meal, and sometimes even becoming the caretaker of Miranda's children. So even when Miranda has her own babysitter, her own child carer for children, Andrea, her personal assistant, is instructed to help Miranda's children with their homework. And then another example of exploitation of women in the novel is that the employers did not properly recognize or appreciate their workers. Even with the large workloads to cover that I've mentioned before, their efforts receive less recognition and less appreciation from the employer, and at some points it will even become unnoticed. So the female characters rarely receive appreciation, thank you, and they were even paid low salaries. And the second one is the work-life imbalance. The work-life imbalance is occurs from the patriarchal belief of prescribed gender roles, from the concept of prescribed gender roles. So according to the concept of prescribed gender roles, the society is divided into two spheres. First is the public and the private spheres. The public sphere, like the workplace, belongs to men, and the private spheres, like the home domain, belongs to women. So workplaces and factories are designed for men to fulfill their obligation as the breadwinner of the family. So according to patriarchy, the workplace has been designed for men because they are free from family responsibility and a platform for men to prove their masculinity. One example of work-life imbalance that is that the female worker have to work for long hours. Like the author revealed that Andrea has to work day and nights as Miranda's personal assistant, and this routine is repeated every day. So from patriarchal belief, men often aim to prove their strength and stamina by presenting themselves as physically strong, as being able to work for long hours. And another example of work imbalance is that the work commitments have denied the female workers their rights to have absence or leave. So uh, the female characters in the novel is narrated. There's one part in the novel that says that the female character had not gone to the bathroom just to make sure that Miranda has not being left unattended. And Miranda sometimes even disturbs her worker during their weekends just to cater her needs. And the third struggle for women in workplace is the unrealistic beauty standards, which become a toxic pursuit of perfection. So there's a study in 2012 by Stewart and Donahue state that beauty standards lead women to undergo much bodily maintenance, like having skincare, makeup, clothing, hair care. So this concept, which relates to femininity, is mainly originated from patriarchy. So women or girls who followed this ideal concept will be labeled as peers, as pure, while those who do not follow the other concept would be labeled as corrupted, as sinful. And even at some point, women are expected to be appealing to men. Like men set the ideal image for women to appear in public. So career women are expected to have a perfect body shape and maintain good looks. That is why all the characters in the novel struggle to lower or maintain their body weight as much as possible, just for them to appear skinny. And other than that, they need to abide by the style set by the employer, by Miranda, which requires them to dress fashionably. So the unhealthy beauty standards call them to wear what Jimmy Choo shoes, to wear Chanel bags, which represent the idea of true beauty. So from the analysis, I found that the adherence to these practical systems creates a hostile environment for women. It somehow creates the idea that women does not fit for the working sphere, that they are in constant distress every time they think of work, every time they go to work. This is because it negatively affects their physical and mental health by causing burnout, routine insecurity, and leading to an ill lifestyle. It pushes them beyond their limit and forces them to undergo unhealthy diet. So the next effects is that these challenges disturb their engagement by creating dissatisfaction and lowering their productivity. As a result, the female characters lost their sense of belonging and eventually ruined their performance. At the same time, the workers also develop some kind of hatred toward their boss. So from this research, I found that The Devil's Prada is a feminist novel that promotes the negative outcomes of the patriarchal system, because the novel invites the reader to reject the patriarchal ideology. The adherence to the patriarchal system creates a hostile environment for women to venture into. So despite the progression, despite the modernization, modernization of society, patriarchy continues to become a burden for women, which highlights the feminist message in the novel. And patriarchy has been proved to exist for centuries, and the values are inherited from generation to generation. If people, including women, men or women, continue to abide with the social norm, with the rooted norms unconsciously. And this research found that women can also be the agents of patriarchy, because women still face hardship at the workplace despite the absence of the male figure in the workplace, because their ideology is inherited in the society and becomes a norm in the community. I think that is all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Aminul, for your presentation. Um, th- there are a few questions from Dr. Madiha in the chat. I think you can answer those first. Good luck.
Maybe I should clarify my questions a bit because at the beginning of the presentation, I didn't know where this was heading. And I think Brother Aminur Razin at the end actually concluded that the novel is actually quite a feminist novel. So I wasn't actually clear whether or not what he was actually criticizing. So but at the end, you did mention that Miranda perpetuates patriarchal structures, kan? So, but my question is, don't you think Miranda is often unfairly judged for exhibiting characteristics that are mostly associated with men? And usually when men do it, it's fine. But when women do it, it's problematic.
I think um, Miranda's characteristic that applies masculinity in her leadership role is um, quite unfair for women workers, because initially women workers expect women authority, expect their senior women to be more understanding with themselves.
Can I just interject?
Okay.
Why do we have different standards or different how should I say different expectations of a woman leader? Why should a woman leader be more understanding than a male leader? Isn't that perpetuating patriarchy as well? That kind of approach? Because we expect female authority to be more maternal, more understanding, and that is actually a problem in our society because we are judged at a different level. Don't you agree? You don't have to answer me now, but it's something to think about because it happens like it goes beyond the realm of the novel. And when your fellow sisters, when they go to the workplace, they will also be confronted with similar expectations of what a female worker or female authority should act like. So that is something we really need to think about.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. I think I agree with you, and if if I may, I would like to relate it with the stereotypes of women. Like women are expected to be like this and that. Men are expected to be like this and that. So you mentioned about female authority, female boss should become what nurturing and understanding is somehow relates to the idea of a mother.
No, meaning that why do we expect women authority, like your boss, your manager, your lecturer, to be more understanding than your male lecturer, boss, manager, when they shouldn't have different expectations, right? So if the Miranda character is a male character, would it have been a problem? Mm, It's like something we really need to think about, right? Because when we're talking about female authority or female figure in power, we hold her up to different standards. Why do we do that? Yeah. I'm not asking,
Okay.
you don't have to answer me, but I just want us to think about it a bit more, right? But I guess the good thing about this presentation, it does raise those issues, and we can have a discussion on this after this as well, right? So I thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Madia, for the apa, clarifications and expansion on the Amino's discussion. And thank you, Brother Amino, for your presentation too. Okay, okay, thank you for your answer too. Anybody else has any in question? Okay, there's one from Aina Fadilah in the chat. Amino, you may answer that.
The theory of feminism, actually, I've studied this theory in a few classes, not only in Benel, but also in Soka classes. So I kind of attracted to this theory because for me, feminism is not feminism is more to achieve gender equality. So I don't believe in the superiority of one over the other, of one gender over the other. Even in Islam, it says that uh, one Muslim about superiority, that regardless of the race, regardless of the skin color, and even regardless of the gender. So following the theory of feminism, I believe that by achieving equality, we can create a better society with tolerance, with respect, and with fair responsibility. And one more unrelated answer is that I have three sisters. Okay, that's how that's why it attracts me. Thank you.
A very interesting answer that is, Amino. Thank you. Thank you for that. Any other questions? We can add one more, or can just skip to the next one. No, to the next speaker. Question one, question two, and question three. Okay, thank you, Brother Amino, for your presentation on um, the influence of patriarchy. Next, I invite the next speaker, Sister Nur Izni Shahida binti Muhammad Sabri, to present her work on mother-daughter relationship and patriarchy in Black Swan. The cycle continues. The floor is yours, Sister Izni.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good evening everyone. My name is Nur Izzah Shahidah binti Umar Sabri and I'll be presenting my final year project entitled Mother-Daughter Relationship and Patriarchy in Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan. The cycle continues. Okay, for this presentation, okay, next slide. Right. For this presentation, I'll be explaining my research hypothesis, background of the study, objectives, research questions, and I'll proceed to the significance, analysis, and conclusion. Okay, next slide. Okay. Okay, for my research hypothesis, I believe that Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan conveys how the mother and daughter relationship as it exists within patriarchy or as a product of patriarchy is causing mental health issues in the female. The women as portrayed in the film, particularly Nina Sayers, which is the main female character in the film, and Erica Sayers, her mother, are seen to be having psychological disturbances and fragmentations of self. This is because the mother-daughter relationship has become detrimental due to the patriarchal influences on the relationship. Darren Aronofsky, which is the director of the film, is emphasizing the cause of the mother-daughter relationship in the film to be detrimental because it mimics the patriarchal structure. Oftentimes, the patriarchy domination exerted on women is to restrict women from advancing into the world of ambition. The same pattern can be seen in the detrimental mother-daughter relationship. Okay, next. A bit background of the study. My research context is that Andrew M. Butler mentioned in his book, Film Studies, femininity is traditionally constructed as passive, modest, nurturing, and emotional, while masculinity is active, rational, confident, and apathetic, as Dr. Mehdi has argued just now. Yeah? Okay. In the early 21st century in Western society, females and males were expected to conform to the constructed paradigms, and any diversion from these social norms was seen as a perversion of sexual normality. So the stereotypes that that are constructed for males and females jeopardize their positions in society, especially for females. Even though feminists have been like fighting for women's rights, sexism is still deeply instilled in societies, and women continue to be devalued and underestimated. So this kind of stereotypes has created a sort of mental pressure for women to situate themselves into the patriarchy standards, which causes them to experience fragmentations of the psyche, especially among mothers. They are torn between enjoying motherhood but also conforming to the standards that the patriarchy system has set on how a female should nurture or behave, do's and don'ts. And the fragmentations of the psyche of the mother will affect not only the mental capacity of the mother towards her child, but also affecting the child. In Black Swan, Aronofsky is portraying the detrimental or the negative mother-daughter relationship is a product of patriarchy as it resembles the patriarchy structures. So the mother-daughter relationship is as oppressive to women like patriarchy. So, okay, I analyzed this film through psychoanalytic lens, Melanie Klein's object relations theory, and the mother-daughter relationship. In this theory, there are few elements that need to be familiarized in order to understand this thesis. Okay. Wait. Sorry. Which are the symbiotic phase, which means that the child experiences a symbiotic relationship or a psychological oneness with the mother. The child is totally dependent upon the mother to fulfill her or his or her need. Differentiation, meaning that to separate from the mother and establish the child's own self-identity, and it is a process where the daughter begins to realize that she is a separate individual from the mother and to recognize her own potentiality of being separate while developing an ego and will want the freedom of her own. Individuation and separation, meaning that in separation, the infant develops an understanding of boundaries of the self, and the mother is increasingly viewed as an individual. Meanwhile, individuation marks the development of a sense of self. In the movie, Black Swan is one of the films that explore the insights of human minds or the unconscious state of a human psyche through the lens of psychoanalysis. And Aronofsky's film can be read as a psychoanalytical exploration of the human psyche that it is deemed to be disoriented and fractured. These problematic human characters are portrayed through the female roles in the film to show the disorganizations of the mind and how unstable a female psyche can be when being disrupted by the patriarchy systems. Next. Okay, the objectives of research and research questions. Okay, to prove that Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan is conveying the detrimental mother and daughter relationship as the outcome of patriarchy and is causing mental health issues in the female, the film is analyzed to answer these questions. How does Aronofsky suggest that a detrimental mother and daughter relationship is a product of patriarchy? And in what way does Aronofsky suggest that mental health issues is a consequence of the detrimental and daughter relationship? Okay, next, the significance of the research is to acknowledge that the structures of patriarchy exist not only through male and female relationships, but could also occurs within female and female relationships. And it is to address the detrimental effects of patriarchy on women's mental health and psyche, and also to expand the awareness on the oppression towards women, which is still occurring, but it is more concealed. As portrayed in Black Swan, the oppression towards women could also happen within female relationships, specifically in this case, the mother-daughter relationship. Okay, I'll proceed to my analysis of Black Swan. Okay. All right. In Black Swan, 2010, directed by Darren Aronofsky, Nina Sayers is the main character in the film who is working herself hard to be appointed as a swan queen in a dancing company. Hopeful Nina and her hard work pays off when Toma Leroy, her director, finally appoints her to be the Swan Queen and will be opening the season with his own version of Swan Lake, as he mentions to the dancers prior deciding the special ballerina who will be featured for the season. We open our season with Swan Lake, done to death, I know, but not like this. We strip it down, make it visceral and real, and a new production needs a new Swan Queen, a fresh face to present to the world. But which of you can embody both Swan, the white and the black? So from the beginning of the film, Thomas symbolizes the source of authority and male dominance, as he is the first male figure emerges in the film and the one who is making the decisions. Nina Sayers and Erica Sayers are the female characters that have the most screen time compared to other female characters, which the former, which Nina Sayers and Erica Sayers will be the center of attention for this analysis. Based on the film, Aronofsky is portraying the negative and detrimental mother-daughter relationship is a product of patriarchy, as it resembles the patriarchy structures. Hence, the relationship is as oppressive to women like patriarchy. In this analysis chapter, I provided the evidence to prove that the detrimental mother-daughter relationship in the film is the product of patriarchy, and the consequence of this is the mental health issue experienced by women. Okay, next. Okay, Black Swan begins with an opening scene on a stage. The beautiful ballerina is dancing under the spotlight on a black stage. From her clothes and the music that she is dancing to in the movie, if you guys watch the movie, it is Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake. The opening scene of Black Swan is an on-stage performance of Swan Lake, featuring Nina Sayers, who is not yet known to the audience. There's a demon in the play, Rothbard, who places a curse on the dancer, which makes her turn into a white swan. In this scene specifically, Rothbard grabs the ballerina and forcing her to dance. So here, the opening scene of Black Swan pinpoints the first indication of patriarchy domination deposited on women. Therefore, right from the beginning of the film, Aronofsky highlights this idea of patriarchy. What is interesting, however, is how the film portrays that patriarchy exists not only in male-female relationships, but within the central mother-daughter relationship. Maternal relationship is patriarchal, as advocated by Aronofsky in this film, is because of the domination exerted on a child. The child will eventually develop anxiety and fear towards the mother from the maternal power enforced on the child. It is the same effect with patriarchal male domination exerted on women, which will causes women to develop self-esteem issues and anxiety towards male. Okay, this can be observed in the maternal domination Erica exerts on the daughter Nina. Aronofsky suggests that the mother-daughter relationship which exists in the film mimics the structure of patriarchy, especially the oppression of women. Patriarchal systems are founded upon the structure of domination, and this structure is reflected in the mother-daughter relationship, which causes the fragmentations of women's psyche in the film, specifically Nina. Okay, to further analyze Black Swan, this chapter I divided into two parts, which are part one, the similarity between maternal domination and patriarchal domination of women, and part two, mental health issue caused by the inclination. Okay, first part of my analysis. Okay, next slide. Okay, okay. The patriarchal system continuously undermines self-confidence and assertiveness of a woman. As a result, women often feel oppressed, which is a recurring phenomenon in a woman's life. Nina Sayers' lack of self-autonomy in the film reflects this kind of oppression and eventually leads to her death. However, Nina's impaired self-confidence does not stem from her relationship with a man, but from the influence of her mother's incomplete separation from Nina. As I mentioned, individuation and separation in the Melanie Klein's objectivation theory. Okay, Erica has been exerting maternal domination on her to the point that she has lost self-autonomy and confidence. The first sign of Erica's maternal domination starts in the beginning of the bedroom scene when Nina wakes up from her dream being on a stage performing Swan Lake. It is described in the script about the bedroom scene. The room looks like it hasn't been redecorated since she was a teenager. Stuffed animals, dolls, pink and frilly. So the film mentioned Nina is a 28 years old woman. So it is unusual for a normal woman who is almost hitting 30 to accommodate such a room that is so childlike. So based on this scene, it can be indicated that there is a presence of domination exerted on Nina as she is still stuck in a moment of incomplete separation from Erica because Erica does not allow her to become independent. So this figure one shows Nina in an up-close shot, which indicates a kind of a psychological space. In the background, it can be seen there are many toys surrounding Nina, um, which indicates that it is surrounding Nina's psychological space. Most of the toys are in pink color, which emphasizes Nina is remain in an infantilized state. This is because, as according to Klein, Erica has been interrupting Nina's psychological and physical development from the process of differentiation, which means that to separate from the mother and to establish the child's own self-identity or Nina's self-identity. Therefore, Nina does not go through a complete symbiotic orbit or phase, and she lingers around Erica like a little child because her mother is restricting her from moving out of the orbit. So this kind of domination on Nina is similar to the patriarchal oppression exerted on women that is restrictive and detrimental and is uh, holding women's back from advancing in the ambitious world. Okay, next. All right. It can be also noted that Aronofsky is indicating the mother figure, which exists in the detrimental mother-daughter relationship, mimics a male figure that causes a woman to lack self-autonomy. This maternal domination can be seen in Erica's expression of sweet girl throughout the film. The expression first uttered before Nina commute to work, which is shown in figure 2. All right, in figure 2, we are looking over the shoulder of Nina and pretty much aligned to her point of view. Erica is likely looking down at Nina, which emphasizes a kind of position of dominance. The expression of on her face is direct, and the way her hair is being pulled back mimics a male figure. Therefore, Darren Aronofsky suggests that the male figure and characterization is present in the figure of the mother. Okay, next slide. Okay. After having a breakfast, basically after this Your Sweet Girl scene, Nina and Erica had a conversation about Nina's going into a new season of the company. She clarifies her joy that she's in a good mood because the director, Toma, has promised her that she will be featured more this time. Instead of being happy and proud of Nina, Erica seems to be faking her joy after Nina rejects her offer to accompany Nina to work. This can be seen in figure 3. And over the shoulder shot is used in the scene, which is a shot showing a subject from behind the shoulder of another character. In this scene, Erica is the subject and Nina is the other character. So Erica's expression face expression in figure 2, which is the previous one, looks contented as she is having a direct eye contact with Nina. The soft lighting shows tenderness radiated by Erica. However, if you see in figure 3, the shot drastically changed the mood as the lighting is now portraying Erica's face half covered by the shadow. So this is called face frame, which means that the shadow emphasizes a character's threatening side. Therefore, this shot is an indication of Erica's maternal domination towards Nina. The mother's eyes that are before directing a warm eye contact is now sharp and very sinister looking. So this arrangement signifies Erica's inadequate experience of the symbiotic phase with Nina, as suggested by Melanie Klein's object relations theory. Erica is pushing domination over Nina because she is opposing her daughter's movement toward differentiation, which is a process where the daughter begins to realize that she is a separate individual from the mother, and it is she realizes and she recognizes her own potentiality of being separate while developing an ego and will want the freedom of her own. Okay, the next part of my discussion, which is part 2, explains the detrimental mother-daughter relationship that mimics the structure of patriarchy, causes the fragmentations of the woman's psyche that leads to a specific mental health issue called schizophrenia. Okay, right. According to Klein, the grounding sense that is provided by a complete symbiotic bond experience is crucial for a child's psychological development. So if if the child does not undergo the complete process of differentiation from the mother, she will face difficulty in the development of her psyche, which causes fragmentations of psyche that leads a specific mental health issue as analyzed in this film, schizophrenia. So in this film, Aronofsky portrays the disruption of Nina's mental health and suggests that it is caused by Erica's maternal domination exerted on her. This relationship is as destructive as patriarchal domination of women. Therefore, patriarchal domination is parallel to maternal domination towards the daughter in this film. Nina Sayer's behavior in this film is consistent with symptoms of schizophrenic patient, which are delusions, hallucinations, and imbalanced relationship. The triggers of these symptoms are different depending on each patient and their trauma. Therefore, in this part of the chapter, I will argue that Nina's psychotic schizophrenic episodes that lead to her death is not from the patriarchal structure per se, but from the patriarchal-like maternal domination towards Nina. Okay, next. Okay, the first part of the symptoms of schizophrenia is the occurrence of delusions, which means the patient believes that he or she is seeing one thing, but in reality it is another thing. Based on the film Black Swan, most of Nina's delusions start when the thoughts of her mother came into her mind that triggers her anxiety, as can be seen in figure 4. Okay, Nina is commuting home from her workplace after a tiring day of auditioning. Her mind is already troubled because her auditioning for the Swan Queen role is somehow interrupted by a girl who barges in and disrupts Thomas, the director's attention on Nina. So Nina's anxiety is signaled through the shaky camera technique when her phone rings and the caller ID shows mom. So from the way Nina refuses to answer and quickly shut the flip phone off, it is noted that she is in no mood to deal with her mother, who is constantly calling her and checking up on her as if she's still a child. Erica's repeated controlling behavior causes Nina her sanity and her anxiety shoots up, triggering her schizophrenic episode. So the moment before her delusion kicks in, the sequence is intercut with a scene of Nina walking. Okay, next. All right. Okay. Okay. What we see is actually a delusion. Nina sees her other or doppelganger. The shaky camera technique is amplified here in this scene, indicating that Nina's mental instability after getting a call from her mother, which brings Nina to her delusions of seeing the other. Okay, Nina is in this scene. Nina is stunned to see a woman who looks exactly like her as she passes by. But when Nina turns to look at the second time, the woman is someone else who is not her. The doppelganger has a contrasting color of clothes, as you can see. Compared to Nina, the doppelganger, she wears an all black edgy suit, almost revealing her chest, while Nina is wearing pink and fluffy coat. These costume choices reveal the inside of Nina's psyche. One part of her wants to be mommy's sweet girl, and the other one wants to gain self-autonomy. So she is experiencing delusions due to her anxiety about Erica's maternal domination, and she is basically splitting. Okay, next. All right. The next symptom of schizophrenia that Nina Sayers is experiencing in the film is hallucinations. It is a false reality which a patient undergoes a kind of sense happening around, but actually it is not real. Uh, it is rooted in Nina's mind that her mental health goes down the drain by anything that is associated with her mother's maternal domination. So I'll just skip this one actually. Okay, from here, from this figure 6, the drawing is basically chanting, start speaking, sweet girl, which is the same expression of Erica's in figure 2, which I explained earlier, emphasizes maternal domination exerted on Nina. Next slide. Okay. Okay, this is actually Nina's point of view. Seeing Erica painting while crying. It is Erica's outlet of her frustrations toward Nina is by painting distorted faces of Nina's. So according to Klein, the conflicting and mentally unavailable mothers in their early motherhood tend to give inadequate mother-daughter experience, and this inadequacy will bring harm not only to the child but to the mother as well. Okay, I think I'll just skip to the conclusion. All right. Okay, all in all, fragmentation of the female psyche in the film is caused by the oppressive patriarchy institution. The idea of patriarchy that centers on the restriction of women to enter the world of the ambition is a cyclical system. Although in Black Swan, the mother's unwillingness to let her child to move out of the symbiotic orbit is the cause of the child's fragmented psyche, the patriarchy is the root cause that leads to all these issues. And women are struggling to advance and develop in the modern world because of the inferiority that is implemented by the patriarchy. So although there have been many investment, feminists establishing new social security for women to survive, still the situation of women being oppressed by the patriarchy remains. Yeah, so I guess that is all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Izni, for your presentation. Any questions from the audience? I think we can take one or two questions from the audience. What's left of it? Question 1, question 2, and question 3. If you have any questions for Sister Izni, you may type in the chat. Maybe she'll answer it later. For now, I will, since we are, running out of time, I think we will proceed to the last presenter of the day, Sister Hurin Ain binti Yazid. She will be presenting her work, which is entitled Post-World Trauma and Family Relations in Winter Garden by Kristen Hanna. Over to you, Sister Hurin. You may start presenting now.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Hurin Ain binti Yazid, and I'll be presenting my FYP title, which is Post-World War Trauma and Family Relations in Winter Garden by Kristen Hanna. Okay, so before I move on to my presentation, just a little bit of introduction of the novel. So Winter Garden is a fictional novel which tells about the intricate bond between a mother and her two daughters. But then the relationship that this women have, it's not a good relationship. So the book is somehow like tells the journey of the two daughters in uncovering their estranged relationship with their cold and disapproving mother. But then over time, towards the end of the novel, it is known that actually the mother is a war survivor from the days of World War II in Leningrad. Okay, so the scope of my presentation is that first I will be presenting my background of study and moving on to just a little bit on the literature review and the theoretical framework and the bulk of my presentation, which is the analysis and the conclusion. So for the background of the study, since I'm studying about post-World War trauma, so just a brief definition of war. It is a species in the genus of violence that is collective, intentional, and organized in nature. So as we all know, there has been two deadly wars that I'm sure everyone is familiar with, which is World War I and World War II. And because an event of war is it is a very catastrophic event, it is undeniable that those who were involved in the war will have PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, which can be defined as it is a psychiatric disorder faced by those who witness traumatizing events such as a severe accident, a natural disaster, warfare, rape, or other events that can cause a serious injury or death. And to add to that, it is also important to discuss about the family members of the people who are traumatized by the war, because family members, they actually, according to a study that I've read, family members, they have to face the war survivors' hypersensitivity, withdrawal, verbal abuse, anger, and destructiveness. And also the intensified emotional withdrawal and retreat from the family members. Because the war survivor has an intensified emotional withdrawal, so they will retreat from the family members. So this is saying that a war survivor's PTSD is not just affected on their own, it will also affect their family members as well. So the thesis statement of my paper is that this paper aims to explore the effects of post-World War trauma and how it may disrupt family relationships as portrayed in Winter Garden by applying the literary trauma theory. So these are my research objectives. Number one is that I wanted to examine the effect of post-World War trauma on family relationships. Number two is to explore the influence of traumatic experiences onto behavior, which can cause a disruption within the family relationship. And lastly, is to uncover the importance of applying the right coping mechanisms in order to deal with their trauma. So the significance of the study is that I believe that when we encounter people with a traumatic experience, it's quite hard to understand their experience because I'm sure like people with a personal trauma, it's not easy for them to talk about it. So this study is I wanted to have like enhanced awareness so that I myself can gain more insight and be more empathetic in case I encounter with people with traumatic experience. And also it is important so that we can eradicate misunderstandings and improve strained relationships that might occur due to symptoms of PTSD. So just a brief literature review on PTSD on war survivors. It is found that those who have faced the violence of war firsthand, it obviously has the capability to cause a lasting damage on their psychological state. And not just that, it may also disrupt several spheres of the family dynamics, like the family cohesion, relationship with spouse, and also the emotional security of the children with their parents. And the numbness which the war survivors face can make them lose their ability to empathize and also resonate with the emotional experiences of their loved ones. So that's why it caused them to make them be further detached from their families. So it's hard. So because of that, it's hard for them to cultivate a good family relationship. So the theory that I used in my FYP is the literary trauma theory. It aims to study the impact of trauma that is depicted in both literature and society by analyzing the psychological, rhetorical, and cultural significance. So this trauma theory, I use the pluralistic model because it gives more room to interpret the various meanings of traumatic experience, because the traditional model, it says that the trauma theory is that trauma is so bad that the survivors they cannot even speak of them. But then the pluralistic model, it says that even though the trauma is really bad, but then they can still make sense of it. They can like pinpoint where it started and the effects and anything that comes with it. So the analysis, before I move on to the analysis, I think it's very important that I present about the characteristics of these three women that I analyze in my FYP. Is that firstly is Anya Whitson, the mother, or her real name, Vera Petrovna. She is actually a Russian woman that she married an American soldier during World War II after she was liberated from the German work camps. Actually, these characteristics of Anya, it's revealed it's quite late in the novel. Like I think like about after half of the book, then we can only know that Anya is actually a war survivor. Before that, the readers and also Meredith and Nina did not know the true story of Anya. So Anya Whitson, she is characterized as a very mysterious woman, but she would only show love and affection towards her husband, but she is very, very distant and cold towards her daughters. But then her behavior is somewhat puzzling to both her daughters, because she had a lot of contradictions in her character. Like for instance, she would worry very much if her daughters were to play outside, but if they were to come inside, she would not even look at them, and she would not even like give an ounce of attention to them. But then even though they had a really bad relationship, there's only one true connection that she had with with her daughters, which is through her fairy tale of the peasant girl and the prince that she would always tell to her daughters before they sleep. But then towards as we move on to the novel, it was found out that the fairy tale is actually her true survival story from the war. So Meredith Whitson is she's the first daughter, and she is just like her mother. She is very, very emotionally independent, to the extent that she does not want to even rely on anyone for emotional support, even towards her husband. So because of that, because of her insistence of not wanting to reveal her weak side to others, it caused for people to leave her, even her husband. Her husband was frustrated with her, and he decided to leave her so that she can contemplate about their marriage. And she also pushed her younger sister away, Nina, which is quite ironic because Nina Whitson is supposedly to be the person that understands her the most, because she also grew up with a very loveless parenting from their mother. But then she still pushed her little sister away. And then moving on to Nina Whitson. She is a wartime photojournalist. So what was very interesting about her job is that uh, her yearning for motherly affection was even projected in her works, because she said that she likes to document women warriors, but then it turns out those women warriors were actually mothers who were having a very intimate moment with their children. So actually it represents what she has been wanting from since her childhood. She wants to have an emotional bond with her mother, but she couldn't get it. Okay. So the first point of analysis is the effects of post-war trauma on family relationships. So Anya, which is her real name, Vera. So I'll be referring to her as Vera from now on, so that it does not cause confusion, because while Vera was in Russia, she also had a daughter named Anya as well. So while Vera was in Russia, she had to witness the death of all of her family members: her mother, her sister, her husband, and two of her children. And the most devastating loss that she faced during the war was definitely the death of her children, Anya and Leo. And she actually blamed herself for their death, because her daughter, Anya, she died while she was boarding an evacuation train, while Leo died because of dystrophy, and he died because they left Leningrad in search of medical aid. So the reason why she blamed their death onto her, because both instances of Anya getting on the train and them leaving Leningrad in search of medical aid Leo is done on how died because of that. So she believed that that was her incompetence of being a mother. According to Brown, traumatized victims with higher feelings of post-traumatic guilt will suffer higher accounts of emotional and physical distress. So in this case, we can see it from in over Leo and Anya's death caused a severe disruption in her emotional stability. The
It appears that Sister Hurin is facing a internet connection problem. Sister Hurin, you there?
Oh no. Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, but yeah, we
Can
can.
you guys hear me? Can you hear me now? Yeah. Where did I
Uh,
lost connection? Is it here? Can I continue? Or
yeah, sure.
okay. So I'm just going to continue. So guilt that stem from the death of her children is actually a secondary emotion of her PTSD from the war. How expected that if they were to leave, it can cause her son. It can cause her son to die, but then she still left. So and Leo died. So that's why she has a very immense amount of guilt. And in this case, because of the trauma of loss that Vera experienced from the war, it caused her to experience complicated grief, which means it's difficult for her to accept her loss, and she denied any reminder of loss, which shows in how she denied love towards Meredith and Nina, and also she is extremely emotionally unavailable and restrictive. So the next point of analysis is on the influence of traumatic experiences onto behavior. So it is established that Vera was definitely not a woman of words, but then her reservedness is actually not normal, because even like small information about her, like her birthday and her age, she did not disclose. She did not tell it to Meredith and Nina. Only after her children are very much grown up in this story. Meredith was already 41 and Nina was in her late 30s, and that's only when they knew that their mother was 81 years old. So it shows that she is very overly cautious in showing any form of emotions. But then this actually she is actually exhibiting symptoms of emotional numbing that was caused from her post-war war trauma. And one of the common traits in a family dynamic that is affected by PTSD is that traumatized parents, they will have a cold and unresponsive parenting style, as can be seen in Vera. So because they are cold and unresponsive, they will cause more distance between their family members, and obviously will cause more dissonance in the family relationship. And this influence of traumatic experiences is not just subjected to Vera. It also affects Nina and Meredith, because they face a secondary traumatization, whereby they spent years, almost lifelong years, in order to understand and empathize with their mother's emotion. So that's why along the years, secondary traumatization caused them to absorb the feelings, experiences, and even some of the mother's symptoms. And the symptoms of Vera's PTSD, of her emotional numbing, can be seen in both Meredith and Nina, because they are also very, very emotionally detached from their partners. Meredith, she refused to be vulnerable with her husband, and Nina, she is very, very reluctant to have her own family, because she does not want to experience the same things as she did with her mother. And also, it's important to note that emotional distancing by a traumatized person can lead to marital instability and possibilities of a divorce. This point can be seen in Meredith, in which I think she was like subconsciously like traumatized by her mother. It's not apparent that she was really, really traumatized, but because of the secondary traumatization, that's why she nearly had a divorce with her husband. So the last point of analysis is the importance of applying the right coping mechanism in trauma healing process. So in this book, it is very much apparent that Vera's coping mechanism is actually it's damaging, because what she does is that she denied her grief, and she also suppressed her grief. So like, for example, when her sister died, she told herself that she will not speak of her sister again. And when her mother died, she wants to forget about it, so that, you know, she doesn't want to remember it. And this is actually a sign of a ruminative coping mechanism, whereby the traumatized person, they will hyperfixate on their depressive symptoms, and they do not have an effective outlet to channel out the negativity. So because of this coping mechanism, traumatized person, they would self-isolate and minimize interaction, just as how Vera did towards her own daughters. And they will also have a sense of like self-manipulation, whereby they will tell themselves distorted versions of traumatic events. In this case, the distorted version of Vera's traumatic event is that she killed her children, but in actuality, she did not. The war took the children. And she would also anticipate negative expectations. So in here, the negative expectation is that one of the reasons she was so scared to Lina, she would lose them again, just like how she lost Anya and Leo. So then the key to heal or to Vera's trauma healing is actually through the fairy tale. It's not just about communicating with the daughters, but it's also about her telling her truth, and also about her expressing her real emotions that she has been suppressing. So through the fairy tale, she had improved. Their emotional connection with her daughters were improved, and she was able to accept her loss from the war. And also noted in the book that when Vera started telling Meredith and Nina about her experiences from the war, she started becoming more calm, and she does not become delusional. Yeah. So she got better. Her mental her mental state was improved after she told the fairy tale to her daughters. So I've come to the end of my presentation. So I conclude this presentation. This study examines the relationship between post-war trauma and the disruption of family relationships. And the study, the findings of this study finds that the trauma of loss from the war, from war survivors like Vera and Anya, can cause themselves to project self-guilt because they failed to protect their loved ones. And their grief was extended to their current family members, even though it was not like an result of antagonism. It's just that it was like her initiative to protect herself from further pain. And also the symptoms of PTSD that was faced by Vera is also projected onto Nina and Meredith, in which they suffered from secondary traumatization. And lastly, ruminative coping mechanism is not an effective option for trauma healing because it does not promote the importance of socializing and the expression of emotion. So this harmful coping mechanism, it actually worsens condition because it enhances further detachment from others. So that is all from me. Any questions you can ask? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sister Hurin, for your presentation. Any audience, if you have any questions, you can type in the chat since we have run out of time. I think we can.
Okay.
Can you answer this
Yeah.
like briefly?
Yeah.
Uh,
So Nafisa Aina asks, how do you decide on which theory to use? Is it recommended by your supervisor, or by your own choice? It's actually by my own choice. I actually initially I did not know what theory to use because I know that my study is psychological, and I do not want to use Freud's psychological theory because I don't think it's appropriate for the study. So I found this literary trauma theory because basically I read a lot. So did I lost connection again?
I think you lost connection again just now. I was waiting for you to stop there. Okay.
So
Repeat your
uh,
answer.
okay. So okay. This theory I found it by myself. It was not recommended by my supervisor. I found it because I read a lot of books that has a connection between trauma and fiction. So in one of those books they mentioned this theory. So I thought it was suitable. So that's why I used it. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Mr. Fisha, for your question.
Okay, thank you, Sister Hurin, for the answer, and thank you to Sister Nafisa for the question. All right, so I think thank you to all of you, thank you to all the speakers for their remarkable presentation of your work. We've come nearer to the end of the seminar, but before that, I would like to invite Sister Mariam Sofia to give her concluding remarks. Please do, Sister Mariam.
Right. So with Hurun being our last presenter, I think we have reached to the end of our seminar. Thank you so much to Dr. Homam, Dr. Tanya, Dr. Madiha, and Ms. Fatiha for joining us today. Also special thanks to my fellow committees and speakers for working hard to make this seminar a success. I would like to also thank the audience and participant as well for staying till the end, even though we exceeded almost 2 hours from the expected time. So I hope you guys learned something from our presentation, and I hope that our presentation can be a help for your FYP journey next semester. My advice is that for you guys to embrace your FYP journey, I do not want to sugarcoat things because honestly, it's going to be super stressful and painful. But please remember that the thoughts that you're going to have regarding your FYP it is going to be the same thoughts that the previous presenter had to. But they thought that you could not make it, but alhamdulillah, we managed to get through it in the end. So enjoy your last year because trust me, you're gonna miss it so much already.
Okay. Thank you, Sister Mariam, for the heartfelt closing remarks. Okay. With the closing remarks delivered by our Sister Mariam, the seminar has now ended. And before we actually leave this meeting, I would like to invite everyone to turn on their webcams for a quick photography session. Sure, turn on, turn on, turn on. Okay, I think this is those who's willingly who's willingly turning on their cameras. So photographer, you may screenshot now. Siapa photographer? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, another one, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think that's enough. Thank you to again. I would like to thank all the presenters as well as the audience for taking your time to join this seminar this evening. I hope the best for all of you in the future. Take care, rest well. Representing the committees, I am sorry for any inconvenience that we had caused throughout the seminar. Thank you and goodbye. And I end this seminar with wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And I'll see you all anytime soon. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.